The Night Garden. It was another long, lonely night. The city buzzed around Isaac Harrington like a machine that never slept, horns blaring, neon lights flickering, people rushing past. But for him, the world had lost its color. The weight of everything, the failed marriage, the dead-end job, the growing sense of disconnection pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. Walking had become his only escape, a way to delay going back to his empty apartment. So he wandered, night after night, hoping to find something, anything, to fill the void. Tonight, something was different. He turned down an alley he didn't recognize, even though he'd walked this route 100 times. At the end of it, a gate stood wide open, leading into a garden that shouldn't exist in the middle of the city. It was like something out of a dream, flowers in full bloom, their fragrance sweet and comforting, vines curling up old stone walls, lanterns casting a warm glow over everything. In the middle of the garden stood a giant oak tree, its branches stretching out like open arms. Isaac stopped in his tracks, staring. This place, this lush, peaceful garden didn't belong here. The city was all concrete, steel, and noise. But here, it was quiet, serene. He stepped through the gate without even thinking about it, like something was pulling him in. "Welcome." The voice was soft, almost a whisper. Isaac turned and saw a woman standing beneath the oak tree. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, her eyes warm and knowing, like she'd been expecting him. "I didn't know this was here," Isaac said, unsure if he was talking to her or to himself. "Few people do," she replied, her voice calm. "The night garden only reveals itself to those who need it." He frowned. "And why would I need it?" The woman smiled, a small, sad smile. "Because you're lost." Isaac wanted to protest, to say that he wasn't lost, that he was just tired, just going through a rough patch. But the truth sat heavy in his chest. He was lost. Had been for a long time. "What is this place?" he asked, more softly now. "It's a place for people like you," she said. "People who've forgotten who they are, or who are searching for something they can't quite name. Here, you can find a moment of peace. A chance to reflect." Isaac didn't know what to say. It sounded like some kind of spiritual mumbo-jumbo, but he couldn't deny the feeling that had settled over him the moment he'd walked in. He hadn't felt this calm, this light, in years. The woman nodded toward a path that wound through the garden. "Take a walk. See what the garden shows you." Isaac hesitated, but something in the air, the warmth, the quiet, the rightness of this place urged him to move forward. He followed the path, his feet crunching softly on the gravel. As he walked, the flowers seemed to glow under the soft light of the lanterns, their colors vibrant and alive. He could hear the gentle rustling of the leaves, the trickle of a small fountain nearby. It was peaceful in a way that felt almost magical. And then he saw them, other people, scattered throughout the garden. They sat on benches, walked hand in hand, or stood in quiet contemplation. They were all strangers to him, but none of them seemed to notice him either. Each person was in their own world, like they were here for their own reasons, their own struggles. Isaac found himself at the edge of a pond, its surface reflecting the soft glow of the lanterns. He knelt down, staring at his reflection in the water. The face looking back at him was his, but it wasn't the tired, hollow version he was used to. His eyes looked clearer, his face softer, younger, almost as if the garden was showing him the person he could be, the person he used to be before life wore him down. "The garden reveals what's inside you," the woman's voice came from behind him. Isaac turned to find her standing there again, watching him with those calm, knowing eyes. "What if I don't like what I see?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's the first step," she said gently. "You can't move forward until you face it." Isaac looked back at his reflection, feeling the truth of her words sink in. He'd been running for so long, running from his failures, from his mistakes, from the person he was afraid he'd become. But here, in this quiet, impossible garden, there was nowhere left to run. He closed his eyes, letting the memories wash over him, the fights with his ex-wife, the long hours at a job that drained him, the nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering when his life had gone so off course. He had been so consumed by the weight of it all that he had forgotten who he was, what he wanted, what mattered. For the first time in what felt like forever, Isaac allowed himself to feel it all. The grief, the regret, the anger. And then, slowly, he let it go. Not all of it, not completely, but enough to make the tightness in his chest ease, enough to breathe again. When he opened his eyes, the woman was still there, watching him with quiet understanding. "It's time," she said softly. "Will I ever come back?" he asked, already dreading the idea of leaving this place. "The garden appears when it's needed," she said. "Not when it's called." Isaac nodded, a strange sense of peace settling over him. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could face it. Like maybe, just maybe, he could find his way again.
He walked back toward the gate, the soft glow of the garden fading behind him. By the time he stepped back onto the street, the garden was gone, just an empty alley in the heart of the city. But something had changed. The world still buzzed around him, loud and chaotic, but it didn't press down on him the way it had before. Isaac took a deep breath, the scent of flowers lingering in the air, and smiled. Somewhere the night garden was waiting for the next lost soul, and maybe, when the time was right, it would find him again. Don't forget to subscribe.